They tried to cut down my orchard the same morning I woke to the smell of cinnamon and rain. I was spooning apple butter into jars in my farmhouse kitchen, old white enamel pots, the ones with black rims that chip like memories, when the low rumble of diesel engines crawled up Maple Ridge Road. The sound moved through the floorboards before it reached my ears, like a warning in the grain. I set the ladle down, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked to the front porch. 2 flatbeds and a yellow excavator crested the hill, tires hissing on wet gravel. The machines looked like metal beetles in the silver Michigan morning, lights strobing through the fog. A third truck followed with a portable toilet chained in the bed and a roll of orange fencing. On the passenger door of the lead truck, Hayes and Stratton Land Group. My heart did a hard, quiet thing, the way a fist closes around a wedding ring. They turned not toward the new cabins 3 farms over, but right into my lane, rolling beneath the wooden sign Cal carved by hand in 1984, Apple Hill Orchard, bowed from winters, still standing. I was 68 years old that day. I'd retired from 31 years of 8th grade civics 2 summers prior. I knew the name of my state representatives and the clerk at the county courthouse. I knew the difference between a permit and a proposal. I knew the sound of a bluff when I heard it in a teenager's bandaged apology, and I knew the sound of a machine that had come to tear something living out by the roots. The trucks parked by the lower stand where we sell cider and donuts the first Saturday of fall. The excavator operator pulled himself down by the handrails and stretched like a man cracking his back before a long shift. Then I saw her, stepping out of a gray crossover behind them, rain jacket the color of a traffic cone, blonde ponytail slick with mist. My grandniece Ava. She walked with the purposeful hurry of someone convinced a bad idea was a good plan. At her side trailed a young man with a day-old beard and a hard hat tipped back like a crown, half swagger, half borrowed authority. I'd met him twice. His name was Tyler. He held a clipboard and wore boots too clean for any job that required them. "Aunt June!" Ava called like she was arriving for pie. She lifted her arm for a hug and remembered herself halfway, dropping it like a curtain. "We texted you last night." "You didn't answer. I was boiling sugar," I said, stepping down off the porch 1 tread at a time, like a general coming off a reviewing stand. "What are you doing with those machines on my property?" "It's a good day to get started," Tyler said in a tone that had sold someone an extended warranty last month. "We've got a weather window." "On what?" I asked. "Phase 1, he said, flipping the clipboard toward his chest as if it were a badge. "Selective clearing, road cut, test trenches. Only a few trees," Ava added, her voice going soft the way you talk to a skittish dog. "Just the north slope." "I told you. Remember? We're opening up the ridge for views. It'll increase the valuation on the remaining acreage. The buyer's willing to pay top dollar if we deliver before the end of the quarter." "The buyer," I said, tasting the word like something turned in the refrigerator. "Who's buying my land?" "Hayes and Stratton," Tyler said. "There's a letter of intent. We've got a development plan for a farm-to-table micro-community. Green roofs, bees, yoga deck. It's very curated." The excavator clanked its arm against the bucket like a horse pawing, and I could smell diesel and wet clay and the ghost of last season's cider. "Turn those trucks around," I said. "You are trespassing." "We're not," Tyler replied with a small, tight smile. "We've got a permit on file and the property owner has signed the quitclaim. We're in full compliance. I'm trying to be neighborly here. I am the property owner," I said, and it surprised me that my voice didn't quake at all. It's impressive what a lifetime telling 15-year-olds to sit down will do for your diaphragm. Tyler slid a plastic sleeve from his clipboard and held it out. A sheaf of papers glistened beneath the rain. At the top, an orange stamp shouted, "Demolition/clearing authorization, Maple County Building Services." There was a scrawl of a signature at the bottom that made my stomach drop by reflex. It looked like my name. It looked almost like my hand. "Aunt June," Ava said quickly, taking a step toward me. "We talked about this. You said someday it would be mine. I grew up under these trees. This is me planning my future. Our future. You're 26, I said. The future can wait for lunch. You hardly harvest anymore, she replied. Half the trees are old. The market's changed. This is smart. This is fraud, I said. The rain ticked on the brim of my hat. You're going to move those trucks off my land or I'm going to call the sheriff. Tyler's smile thinned. He gestured to the excavator with his chin. Let's get the line staked, he told the operator through the noise, like I wasn't standing there, like I was one of those cardboard cutouts of a farmer that smiles beside highway orchards without blinking. I pulled my phone out of my apron pocket and dialed 911 with a calm I earned, breaking up fights in hallways. A robin landed on the porch rail and shook rain off its wings like confetti. Maple County emergency, a woman answered. What's your situation? This is June Ellison at Apple Hill Orchard, I said. I have unauthorized heavy equipment on my property, a company called Hayes and Stratton and 2 private individuals. They claim a permit. They claim a signed quitclaim deed. I did not sign a quitclaim deed. They intend to cut my trees. We've had a call about that address this morning, she said, voice sharpening a shade. Deputy Ramsey is en route. He should be there in 8 to 10 minutes. Tell him to bring a thermos, I said. He'll want to stay a while. I lowered the phone and looked at my grandniece. Rain beaded on her eyelashes. She'd been a child once who fell asleep in my lap in the hay wagon during October weekends, her hair smelling like sugar. I remembered how light she had felt, the weight of a promise in the small, simple body of a sleeping girl. When did she start mistaking other people's promises for hers to spend? Ava, I said, put your hands in your pockets. It'll keep you from doing something we cannot take back. She didn't move. The excavator clanked forward and set its bucket like a blunt animal lowering its head to drink. Kill it, I said, my voice cutting over the engine. Something in it made the operator look up. You can tell when a person has had a mother. The first siren rose from the road as the blade hovered over the first northern spy we planted the year we almost divorced, because we couldn't stand the way we loved each other. Too hard. Not enough room to breathe. Cal and I didn't cut that tree then. We were not going to cut it now. The deputy pulled in behind the machines and parked crosswise to block the exit. He got out slow like he had all the time in the world and none of it for nonsense. Cole Ramsey had been in my civics class 20 years ago. He'd written his research paper on why parking tickets weren't tyranny. He'd made me proud. Morning, Ms. Ellison, he said, nodding. You doing all right? I was, I said. He turned to Tyler and the crew and his smile shut off. You've been asked to leave private property, he said. Who's in charge here? I am, Tyler said, stepping up into the empty air where authority should have been. Got identification? The deputy asked. Tyler gave him a license and the permit packet. The papers made a small, wait sound when the deputy took them. He flipped through them with careful fingers. This signature is contested, he said, tapping the bottom page with his index finger. He had a teacher's hands. Until I confirm with the county and the owner, nothing moves. You can wait in your trucks, or you can be on your way. Aren't you going to enforce a lawful permit? Tyler asked, smile gone, his jaw tightening as if he'd rehearsed indignation in a mirror and found it fit him poorly. A lawful permit is what I'm looking for, Cole said. I've been wearing this badge long enough to know what they look like and what they sound like when they're lying. He lowered his voice so only the two of us could hear. You want me to walk the fence line with you, Ms. Ellison? Please, I said. We walked. I told him the trees' names the way some people say the rosary. Honeycrisp, Macintosh, Northern Spy, Ida Red, each bead a season, a harvest, a bruise we survived. The orchard breathed in the rain and the machine steamed in the cool, and I remembered the afternoon Cal and I sunk the posts for the fence, his arms brown, his laugh low as a tractor listening to a baseball game on AM radio. He died 6 years ago in our bed, a widowmaker heart attack that didn't read the calendar, and sometimes when it rained, the sound still tricked me into expecting his boots on the porch. Did you sign anything? Anywhere? Cole asked. I signed for my own packages, I said. That's the list. You want to give me the go-ahead to ask the county to ping the recording? He asked. If anything hit the books overnight, we'll know it. Ask, I said, and ask fast. He called it in. We stood in the wet air, the three of us who had names for each other, and watched the ones who did not. The excavator idled like a big cat deciding whether to pounce or nap. "Deputy," Tyler called, not using his name. "There's a schedule here. There are penalties for delay. You'll survive a morning," Cole called back without looking. "Or you won't." I'm not an accountant. In my pocket, my phone hummed. I pulled it out. A text from a number that wasn't in my contacts glowed from the screen. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. We can take care of you." B.S. I stared at the initials like a riddle, and then I didn't. Bo Stratton, Hayes and Stratton's younger half. The one who'd been photographed cutting a ribbon at the business park where the prairie used to be. I powered my phone down. I was old, but I was not naive. When a man offers to take care of you during a dispute over something you own, he does not mean soup. Cole's radio crackled. He lifted it to his ear. "Copy," he said. "Copy and thanks." He clipped it back on his shoulder and turned in a pivot I'd seen in church ushers. "County clerk reports a quitclaim deed filed at 7:12 a.m. this morning," he said. 2 pages scanned, witness and notary, conveying your property to Ava Mercer for the sum of $1 and love and affection. The rain stilled on the leaves. Ava looked at me. Tyler looked at the deputy like he couldn't decide whether to smirk or run. "Do you want to tell me where you signed that, Aunt June?" Ava asked, her voice brittle as a teacup you don't like but won't throw away. "I didn't," I said. "And if you put my name on paper, you put a crime there too." "That's a civil matter," Tyler said, like he was trying out phrases from a podcast about getting what you want. "Fraud isn't civil," Cole replied. "Shut the machines down. Nobody moves so much as a sapling until a judge says otherwise." The operator lifted his hands in surrender and pulled the key. The excavator coughed, sighed, and went quiet. The orchard breathed. I walked back to the house with rain sliding down my neck and cinnamon drying on the stove. I took the pot off the burner, set it on a trivet Cal had made out of horseshoes, and looked at the old portrait over the kitchen table, me and him in a bushel basket of apples the fall we weren't poor anymore. I touched the frame with my knuckle. "You seeing this, Cal?" I asked the empty room. My voice sounded steady. My hands shook where no one could see. I poured coffee into a thermos, found my keys, and drove into town. The county building has a particular smell: paper, shoes, and the sadness of fluorescent lights. The clerk's office had a new front desk with a fake marble top and a plastic jar of peppermint candies that looked like they'd melted and set again at least twice. Behind the counter, a woman with silver hair in a French twist looked up and smiled in a way that felt like a door opening. Her name tag read, Shirley A. Cobb. "Ms. Ellison," she said, "you here in person. That's good. Your deputy's already been on the phone. I need to see what was recorded this morning in my name," I said, "and I need copies." Shirley turned to her computer and typed the way people knit, rhythm, and care. The printer coughed to life like a cat deciding to purr and spit at the same time. She slipped the warm pages into a plastic sleeve and slid it across the counter. 2-page quitclaim deed, she said, tapping with a red-nailed finger. Recorded by a firm out of Grand Rapids at 7:12. Notarized by an E. Schluter. I don't know that notary. Witness signatures, yours, and, She looked up gently. A family member. I read my name on the slender line where signatures pretend to be people. It was my name written by someone who'd seen my hand at Christmas 100 times. It was almost right. It didn't loop the J the way my J loops every time, because my mother taught me to throw my letters like a lasso and never let go. This J had closed in on itself like a snake eating its tail. "Who uploaded it?" I asked. "And where?" "Online," she said. "We get most filings that way now. The address is a suite in a co-working space. E-filing account was created last week. Payment with a prepaid card." "Who notarized it?" I asked. She pointed at the name. E. Schluter. License number, let me cross-check. She typed, squinted, and then straightened. "Nope. That's not an active notary in the state of Michigan." She looked at me the way you ask a friend if the man at the bar is bothering her. "Do you want me to flag it for fraud?" "Yes," I said. And I want to file a sworn affidavit that this signature is not mine and that no transfer was authorized. She nodded. Do you have identification? I slid my license across the counter. My photo looked like every woman's photo after 60, tired and candied with patience. We filled out forms. The pen felt heavier than it should have. When I signed like my mother taught me, and the J looped like a lasso catching something that had bolted toward a cliff. When I finished, Shirley leaned in and lowered her voice. There's one more thing, she said. Last year, your husband's conservation easement got scanned into our new system. Most folks forgot those existed until developers started acting like old trees owe them rent. Yours is on file, recorded in 2012. It runs with the land, not the owner. No cutting, no grading, no subdivision without written consent from Maple Ridge Land Conservancy. She paused. We don't have any such consent on record. I looked at the paper until it blurred. Cal had called it his love letter to the future the day he signed it, grinning at me like a man who'd just caught a fish with his hands. I'd called it his way of bossing me from the grave, and he'd laughed and kissed my ear. Shirley, I said, you are the spoon in my apple butter, indispensable. Will you email that easement to me and to the deputy who answered my call? And will you make a note in whatever system you have that any attempt to record a release of that easement should ping a fire alarm in your soul? She smiled without her eyes and wrote something on a post-it for herself like a curse disguised as a reminder. Already done, she said. Now go get yourself a lawyer who knows where the bones are buried. I knew exactly who to call. When you live a long time, your address book is a quilt. You save the warm squares. You toss the frayed. Naomi Pierce had graduated from our high school the year before I retired. She'd argued with me for 3 straight weeks about whether the Bill of Rights protected sarcasm. Last I heard, she'd gone to law school, clerked somewhere hot, and come back to Maple County when her father's knees started asking to retire. Her number was pinned to my corkboard under the calendar with a push pin shaped like a rooster. I dialed from the hallway by the soda machine because I wanted witnesses if I fainted. Pierce Law, a voice answered that sounded like a bell with elbows. Naomi, I said, it's Miss Ellison. There was a beat, and then she laughed like a person who remembers delivering a speech from a desk without permission slips. Miss Ellison? Sir, yes sir, or ma'am, are you calling to audit my commas? I'm calling because someone filed a quitclaim deed purporting to transfer my orchard to my grandniece for $1 and what I assume is discounted regret. There are bulldozers at my gate. There's a developer's name on a truck, and my late husband's conservation easement says nobody touches a twig without permission. She stopped laughing. Come to my office, she said. Bring the copies. Don't sign anything. Don't say anything to anyone except law enforcement and me, and take pictures of everything you can see without trespassing onto anyone else's stupidity. I went. Her office was 3 rooms in an old brick building that used to be the feed store, across from the diner that still put a slab of butter on pancakes like 1956 wasn't over. Naomi met me at the door in jeans and a blazer, hair pulled back with a pencil. She had the same eyes she had at 16, the kind that kept moving even when the room was still. We spread paper on her conference table like maps before a march. I told her everything, the machines, the permit, the notary who wasn't, the text from BS. The easement no one had bothered to ask about because arrogance makes you illiterate. She listened without interrupting, the way good students learn and good lawyers stay dangerous. Okay, she said finally, here's the plan. Restraining order first. The legal grounds are trespass, forgery, fraud, and violation of a recorded conservation easement. We'll seek an emergency temporary restraining order to stop any work immediately and freeze any purported transfer. We'll ask the court to order law enforcement to enforce it on site. We'll file a complaint for declaratory judgment that the quitclaim deed is null and void. Then we'll hand this packet to the prosecutor and the state police for criminal review. Parallel tracks. You're a civics teacher. You can walk and legislate. Do it, I said. She looked at me over the stack. If your grandniece is involved, we're stepping into family. You sure you want me to push this hard? My husband wrote 36 letters to the editor about protecting public easements, I said. He was never more himself than when he was a nuisance for the common good. He's dead. I have to be two people now. Naomi grinned, then caught herself and sobered like a person remembering you're not supposed to flirt during a eulogy. Okay, she said. While my clerk drafts the motion, call your bank. Freeze any accounts if someone's trying to change beneficiaries or addresses. Then call the Maple Ridge Land Conservancy. Ask for their director and put me on speaker. They will want to know their easement is being violated. They can bring the weight of God and donors. I called Liam Herrera at First Maple Savings, who once set aside the best peaches at the farmer's market for his wife because he believed in romance more than sugar. He pulled up my accounts and sucked air through his teeth in a way that means you're either about to get very rich or very mad. June, he said, voice low. 2 days ago, someone attempted to add a joint owner to your checking account through the online portal. It flagged because the driver's license image they uploaded was odd. It looked like an image of an image. Our fraud team rejected it, sent a notice to your email. There were also attempts to change the mailing address on your CD, all denied. But if they tried here, they will try elsewhere. Freeze everything that can be frozen, I said, and print those logs in case we need them. I'll have them notarized, he said. And June, I'm sorry. Don't be, I replied. You didn't raise her. I called Maple Ridge Land Conservancy and got the executive director on the second ring because a donor had once taught me the difference between cold calls and warm introductions. This is Nick Archer, a man answered. He had the voice of a person who owned 3 flannel shirts and knew where every one of them was. Mr. Archer, I said, this is June Ellison from Apple Hill. My husband Cal recorded a conservation easement with you in 2012. There are excavators on my land. A developer filed a quitclaim deed this morning in favor of my grandniece, allegedly signed by me. The county clerk confirms the notary is fake. No authorization from your office exists for any cutting or grading. My lawyer is here. You're on speaker Naomi Pierce, Naomi said. We're filing for an emergency TRO within the hour. We'll add Maple Ridge Land Conservancy as an interested party if you want in. We want in, Archer said, in the voice of a man who just remembered why he woke up. Text me your address. I'll be there in 20 minutes with our land steward. Nobody cuts a tree protected by our easement without my signature, and my signature is locked in a drawer in a room my mother prays for. Bring a camera, I said. Everyone else did. By mid-afternoon, my gravel drive looked like a farm-to-table version of a war zone. The excavators idled, caged birds with steel beaks. Deputy Ramsey parked in the gate and wrote in his little notebook in the boredom that comes between right and wrong when the wrong has to wait. Naomi's clerk, a college kid with cuffed sleeves named Devin, arrived with a stack of stamped papers high as a loaf of bread. The pages had the kind of gravity that makes men move. Order signed, he said to Naomi, handing her the top sheet. Judge Sloan put it on the docket as emergency relief. She also set a hearing for Friday at 9. We'll be there, Naomi said, and looked at me. Want to do the honors? Always, I said. We walked to the gate. The rain had thinned to a mist that made everything look like it had already happened, and we were remembering it. Tyler stood by the passenger side of his truck, arms crossed, as if the patent on swagger hadn't expired. Mr. Baines, Naomi said, voice crisp. I'm Attorney Pierce. On behalf of Ms. Ellison and Maple Ridge Land Conservancy, I'm serving you with a temporary restraining order, case number 25-4438, enjoining you and anyone acting in concert with you from entering, altering, or otherwise interfering with Apple Hill Orchard. You are to cease all activity immediately and remove your equipment within 24 hours. A hearing on the preliminary injunction is set for this Friday at 9 a.m. at the Maple County Courthouse. He took the papers like they might bite and handed them to the excavator operator like he might eat them. The operator handed them back. Somewhere in the shuffle, the orange sleeve fell into a puddle and soaked like a sinner. Ava stood beside the truck with her raincoat hood up, eyes red in a way that said she'd either been crying or learning how. "Aunt June," she said. She didn't reach for me now. "Yes," I said. The word can be an invitation or a boundary. That one was a boundary. "I didn't mean," she started. "You meant to cut my trees," I said. "You meant to take my land." "There is no other meaning buried under those meanings. I grew up here," she said, a bit of heat flaring in her voice like a match. "You said—" "I said I loved you," I replied. "I do." "Love is not a deed transfer." Tyler took one step toward me, eyes flat as coins. "The market's moving," he said. "You can either move with it or wake up to find it moved you." "Son," I said, and I used that word the way we used to use erasers, I taught teenagers who had more respect for the idea of property than that sentence did, and half of them thought the cafeteria pizza was a God-given right. "Move your trucks. I am making pot roast." A small sound came from the lane and grew into something with a camera. A reporter from the Maple County Free Press rolled up in a hatchback with the station logo on the door in peeling letters. The driver was a young woman wearing a jacket too thin for the weather and a confidence that fit better. Her cameraman stepped out behind her, hoisting a Sony that made everything look like it mattered. "Ms. Ellison," she called. "Camila Rhodes, Free Press. We got a tip." "Who doesn't?" I said. "My coffee pot knew before I did." "Can we talk to you about the conservation easement and the restraining order?" she asked. "People love the orchard." "They're going to care. Record everything," Naomi said, low to me. Every word she broadcast put sunshine on a moldy thing. I told Camilla what had happened, and not one thing more. I said the words fake notary and quitclaim deed I did not sign and bulldozers and easement. I said, "We are not selling." I said, "The trees are older than your boss." I said it calmly, and I said it without apology because that's how you teach children and counties. What respect looks like, even when you feel the tremor of grief in your knees. By dusk, the trucks had backed out slow and sullen. The excavator operator honked once. Not rude, like a person saying sorry without a language for it. Tyler and Ava's car followed last. She didn't look back. He did, but only to check the side mirror. When their lights disappeared over the hill, the orchard made a sound I had never heard before, or maybe had heard each year without naming it. The sound a field makes when it knows it gets one more season. I did make pot roast. I ate it at the kitchen table under the picture where Cal's hand was on my waist the way a man steadies a thing he built so it doesn't tip. I slept poorly, woke at 4 to crows starting their arguments, made coffee, and wrote in the little ledger where I write everything. Pest sightings, rainfall, and the things people do that make sense only when you put them next to other things people did. Wednesday in town, I stopped at the bank to sign the fraud affidavit Liam handed me like a bandage that knew more than the wound. He showed me security footage. Someone in a baseball cap and a mask trying to use a laminated driver's license to open a joint account. The person's hands were small. "I can't swear it's Ava," he said, "but the height is right. And the choice to laminate your own license is a choice that doesn't lead to longevity." "Keep the footage," I said. "We might need it for a training video about hubris." At the post office, Shirley's cousin who runs the place slipped me a certified letter addressed to me from a law firm representing Hayes and Stratton. The letterhead had too much gold on it for Michigan. Inside, the words leaned like a man in a bar. They warned me that my attempts to interfere with a lawful project would expose me to liability. They suggested a settlement conversation. They threatened to seek damages. I took a pen out of my purse, wrote N.O. in the margin in block letters, and tucked the page back in the envelope. I am never cruel when I can be efficient. At home, I walked the rows and greeted the trees like parishioners. I tied a length of blue twine around the trunk of the one Cal and I called the wedding tree because we danced beneath it the night the band finally learned our song. The twine stood for nothing more than my say-so. Sometimes that is enough to make a thing feel safer. At noon, Ava walked up the lane alone, hands in her raincoat pockets like I had told her. She stopped at the fence and did not touch it, which felt like a small miracle. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. "I live here," I replied. She swallowed. Her mouth found a shape for words and then lost it and then found it again. "We were going to surprise you," she said. A good surprise. Sell a piece, keep the heart, pay off Mom's medical debt, put a down payment on a place of our own, a small farm, fewer trees, something we could manage. You could have asked, I said. You would have said no, she said. You always say no first. My number is the pause before my yes, I said. It's a breath. It's not a verdict. It's how I listen to the part of me that was alive before you were born. Her eyes flashed. You told me when I was 12, right under that tree, that one day this orchard would be mine. You said it while you tied my hair back with a string like you were a grandmother in a movie. Do you not remember? I remember everything, I said. I remember your knees were skinned. I remember your shoelaces were wet. I remember you said you wanted to live here forever. And I remember I said, if you love something enough to learn its name, I will find a way to let you belong to it. I did not say I would sell it for a yoga deck. She laughed in a sound that wasn't a laugh. You don't get it, she said. We couldn't buy a house. We couldn't keep up. Tyler invested in something he shouldn't have. Crypto, a coin named after a dog. We lost $20,000. He said he could make it back if he had seed money. He knows people. They said sell a sliver. He said Hayes and Stratton does this all the time. They cut a corner and then they cut a check. He said I had to play hardball with you because you don't listen unless someone yells. Yelling is a choice, I said. So is stealing. It wasn't stealing, she said. It was me taking what I was going to get anyway. But earlier, before we drowned, Ava, I said softly, I love you. You are not drowning. You are standing in water you walked into and calling it a flood. She looked past me at the farmhouse, at the porch where we'd shelled peas, at the kitchen window where light used to promise pancakes the size of frisbees. Tyler says you're stubborn, she said. He says you're letting the past keep you from the future. Tyler is projecting, I said, and the past is not a chain. It is a root. She kicked a pebble. It hit the fence and fell back on the side that was still ours. What happens now? She asked. Now we go to court, I said. We tell a judge what you did. She tells you what it costs. Then I go home to the same bed I've slept in for 29 years and you go learn how to sleep in the one you made. She flinched. You don't have to cut me out, she said. You don't have to. I don't have to do anything, I said. I choose to do this because I have lived long enough to know that if I let this rot, it will spread. She turned without saying goodbye and walked down the lane slow, like a person leaving a museum after being told the painting is a print. Thursday, a thin man in a suit that made a whispering sound knocked on my door and announced himself as a field representative from Hayes and Stratton. He handed me a folder with glossy renderings of houses that all looked vaguely apologetic. He told me there was still room to negotiate. I asked him if he knew the difference between a yard and a meadow. He said, "Peanuts." I closed the door gently so the wind wouldn't do it for me. Friday morning, I put on the black suit I wore to Cal's funeral and a red silk scarf my sister sent me from Chicago when she thought I needed cheering. I drove into town with Naomi riding shotgun and the map of my life folded small enough to fit in my fist. The courthouse had been cleaned for spring, and the judge's bench smelled faintly like lemon oil and men trying not to fidget. Judge Rebecca Sloan called the case. She had a face that made you want to do your homework, even if she never asked for it. Naomi argued like a person who'd been writing this paragraph in her head since the minute she'd learned the alphabet. The opposing counsel, a man with cologne you could hear, argued like a person who'd never met a tree he didn't consider an obstacle. Naomi put the clerk's fraud flag into evidence. She put the fake notary into evidence. She put the conservation easement into evidence with a copy of the land trust's baseline document that showed every tree on a map like a constellation. She put Liam's bank affidavit into evidence. She called Deputy Ramsey, who testified that an excavator had been on site with intent to clear, and that he had halted activity pending verification. She called Nick Archer, who explained what runs with the land means in the plain, calm way of a science teacher. Then Naomi called me. I told the court about waking to Diesel and walking to the porch and recognizing my own name miswritten on a document pretending to be mine. I spoke the words I did not sign so clearly they could have been printed. I told them about teaching children to respect things older than them and about how easy it is for a person to confuse love with ownership. I did not cry. I did not yell. Both would have been correct. Neither would have been effective. Opposing counsel tried to paint me as confused. He asked me how old I was. He asked me if I checked my mail, if I authorized any family member to assist with financial affairs, if I was aware of market pressures. That last one made the judge's eyebrow climb her forehead like a squirrel. "Counselor," she said, "your client filed a quitclaim deed bearing a forged signature and a notary stamp that belongs to a dead man. If you keep talking about market pressures, I'm going to find a way to weigh you." There was a sound behind me like someone trying not to laugh in church. I didn't turn. I kept my eyes on the seal above the judge's head where Justice stands there with her blindfold and her scales, and no patience for poor metaphors. Judge Sloan granted the preliminary injunction. She ordered Hayes and Stratton and any agents acting on their behalf or purported transferees to cease all activity, remove equipment, and refrain from entering the property. She referred the forged notarization to the county prosecutor. She set a status conference and told everyone to go home and think about their life choices. When the gavel fell, not hard, just enough, I bent my head and breathed for the first time in 3 days. Naomi put a hand on my arm. "Good," she whispered. "That's good." Outside the courthouse, Camilla asked for a quote. I said, "The orchard will be here in the fall." That's the quote. She smiled like she knew a headline when she heard one. The next week felt like a season compressed. Phone calls, paperwork, long walks between the rows to check for broken fences, broken branches, broken promises that might be fixed with twine. Naomi's investigator found the notary, a name pulled from an obituary, a stamp ordered from a website that shipped fast and asked no questions. The county prosecutor filed charges: grand larceny by trick, forgery, filing false instruments. Tyler was handcuffed on a Thursday afternoon in the parking lot of a gym where men go to lift their sadness. Ava turned herself in on Friday morning with a sweater on that looked like the one I bought her for Christmas when she was 13 and swore she hated purple until she didn't. People came by the orchard the way people visit hospitals when a friend is sick. Women from church brought casseroles. A man who'd once tried to poach deer apologized without God or witnesses. A boy on a bicycle left a note tucked in the fence that said, "Don't let them." In the bottom drawer of my desk was a wooden box with a brass latch. Cal kept letters there you could only read if you were willing to be married to him. I opened it one afternoon and found one addressed to me in his tiny, tidy print, "June, if you ever need it." The paper inside was a copy of the easement and a codicil to his will I'd forgotten. If any heir shall contest or attempt to circumvent the conservation easement by fraud, duress, or reckless disregard, their interest in the property would pass instead to the Ellison Education Trust, a small scholarship fund he and I had set up for kids who grew up here and wanted to learn how to do anything besides leave. There was also a note in his hand. "If this is happening, I'm mad. I'm not there. Remember to eat. Remember you are right." I called Naomi and told her about the codicil. She laughed like a person who finds $20 in a winter coat she forgot she owned. "You married well," she said. "I married a man who liked to fight politely," I replied. We filed the codicil with the court. We updated my will. I sat at Naomi's conference table and signed with my J looping like a woman throwing a rope around the decision she'd made. I cut Ava out. I cut out any person who might stand behind her in line with a hat in his hand. I left the orchard to Maple Ridge Land Conservancy with a lifetime estate for me, and upon my death, to the Ellison Education Trust to use as a teaching orchard. If anyone tried nonsense again, the deed itself would be nonsense-proof. When I left the office, the sky had cleared, and the air smelled like cotton on a line. I drove home with the windows down. The orchard rose over the hill the way a choir stands all at once when the organ hits the note that's older than grief. The plea offers came 2 weeks later. Tyler took a deal, pleaded to a reduced forgery charge, agreed to restitution, probation, community service. He did not look at me when he said guilty in a voice you could stir coffee with. Ava's deal was similar, lighter. The prosecutor had eyes and a heart. I did not speak. There are times when your silence is a weapon. There are times when it is mercy. I let it be a mirror if she wanted to see. She came to the house once more. She stood at the edge of the lane like a person standing at the edge of a lake she used to swim in. She had a brown paper bag in her hands, like something a person carries to make their hands less empty. "I'm supposed to apologize," she said. "Then do it," I said. "I'm sorry," she said. It came out like a stone. "For what?" I asked. "For trying to take what wasn't mine," she said. "For saying you don't listen. For not listening." "Okay," I said. "That's it?" she asked, a flicker of the teenager in her who once would have pushed until I took her phone. "What did you want?" I asked. "A hug? A do-over? If this were 8th grade, I'd make you write a paper on the difference between forgiveness and consequences. Then I'd give you back your phone if you promised to put it on the kitchen counter at 9 p.m. and go to bed like a human. But you're an adult. You get both. I forgive you. And the consequences stay." "I heard you cut me out of the will," she said. "I heard you cut down my trees," I said. She winced like the sentence hit her molars. She held out the paper bag. Inside were photos, her standing on the hay wagon throwing donuts to kids, Cal holding her under the wedding tree, me teaching her to prune. I took them like a person Anich's rings. "Keep them," I said. "Remember, you are the kind of person who loved this place. It may help you be that person again." She nodded and left. I watched her walk like you watch a storm head for a field you no longer farm. Summer came in a rush of bees and the picnic table's splinters. I hired a part-time farmhand named Luis, who could stack crates like a poet, stacks reasons to keep going. I had cameras installed at the gate that sent pictures to my phone like a good granddog. I changed the locks. I replaced the length of blue twine on the wedding tree with a ribbon from one of Cal's birthday presents that said happy in block letters, not because trees can read, but because I like to think they can feel intention. Camila came back in September for a follow-up story as the first leaves turned yellow, like someone had dipped them in school bus paint. She filmed people picking apples, filmed me stirring cider with a paddle, filmed Nick Archer talking about how conservation easements are not romantic, but they are how you get to keep getting to be romantic. The piece aired on a Thursday night and was shared by people I used to grade. I learned new words for grandma from the comments, some of which were not technically accurate, but were enthusiastic. One afternoon, a white SUV stopped at the stand, and a man in a suit stepped out. He looked like he'd aged 3 promotions in 2 months. He introduced himself as Bo Stratton. "I wanted to apologize," he said. He did not reach to shake my hand, which I admired. Apologies are not a wrestling match. "You can do that with money," I said, "because at my age there is no point outfitting your truth in lace. Pay the county for the court's time. Pay the land trust for the hours. Replace my crushed fence posts, reimburse me for legal fees, and make a donation to the Ellison Education Trust that will make you remember this day when you forget other days." He nodded slowly, a man learning there are languages he does not speak. "We can do that," he said. "And Ms. Ellison, we're out of Maple County." For good. The board voted yesterday. Too much headwind. Where there are trees, I said, there is wind. He almost smiled, and then he didn't. The first Saturday of October, Apple Hill opened for the season. People came steady, then thick, then the way you think they won't stop until you run out of cups. Kids ran the fence line. A woman cried quietly under the Ida Reds, and I pretended I didn't see so she could be alone with whatever she was holding. I sold cider and donuts and small knives with short blades for peeling. I rang up rain boots, hats, a book of recipes for things you already know how to make. I put a donation jar on the counter for the scholarship fund. It filled like a well after a storm. Just before closing, a man with a badge but no uniform walked up and said the county had finished the prosecutor's paperwork. that the inspector who had stamped the fake permit had resigned, that there would be no appeal. He bought a half bushel and paid cash and told me the Honeycrisp were better this year than last. We had more sun in August, I said. It helps. When the last car left and the light went sideways, I walked to the wedding tree and sat with my back against the trunk, which had learned what it was to be steadfast long before I did. I took one apple, a Northern Spy, my favorite, and polished it on the sleeve of Cal's old shirt I wear when no one's looking. I bit into it. The tartness hit the nerve behind my ear that always surprises me, and I laughed out loud at the trick of it, at the pure, stupid joy of a bite of fruit in a world where paper can pretend to be truth if you let it. In the quiet, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. It read, "I started community service today, picking litter in the park. It's not the orchard, but it's something. I'm sorry again. A." I typed back, "Fall is good practice for people. You can't hang on to leaves forever." Then I put the phone away. I let the tree hold my back. I watched the light go from gold to a color I don't have a word for because maybe it hasn't been named yet. The way some kinds of courage don't get names until someone practices them. They tried to cut down my orchard. They brought machines. They brought paper. They brought the kind of certainty that can only grow in people who have never stayed long enough to see what winter asks. I brought a lifetime of saying no before yes, of walking property lines at dusk with a dog that would have died for me, of teaching children to sit down and listen to something older than themselves. I brought a man's love, written into the land like a psalm. I brought a pen that loops the J like a lasso. I brought the kind of stubbornness that is not anger, but attention. They tried to cut down my orchard. I cut them out of my will. And then I did the thing you do after you win. Not the cheering, not the interview, not the victory lap through a grocery store where they comp your milk, but the small, ridiculous thing that makes you feel like a person again. I went inside. I turned the stove on. I stirred the pot. I tasted the apple butter with the back of the spoon. I added a pinch of salt because sweetness needs something to lean against. I wrote 2 lines in my ledger. October 12th. Honeycrisp strong. Laws even stronger. I put the jars in a hot bath. I counted to the seconds by heart. I listened for the seal to pop one by one, that satisfying sound of something done right and closed up tight. Not because you're never going to open it again, but because you want it to keep until the morning you need it. Winter came, like it always does. Too slow, then all at once. Snow laid its hand on the branches. The deer learned the new fence. The camera at the gate texted me pictures of foxes at 3 a.m., and a man who parked across the road and smoked a cigarette like it was a thought he couldn't swallow. In January, the first scholarship check went out to a girl whose hands smelled like motor oil and bread dough. She cried in my kitchen and told me she was going to learn how to fix tractors and then fix everything else. In March, when the sap began to rise and the sun started to remember us, I drove into town and sat at the lawyer's office with Naomi and signed one last paper. It named the orchard not just as a piece of land, but as a thing with a mission. In the space where the form asked me to write use, I wrote, "To teach stubbornness and mercy in that order." A week later, I got a letter in the mail, not certified, handwriting I recognized. Inside, a single sheet from Ava. It said, "I dreamt of the orchard last night. I was little. Grandpa was there. He was angry, but not at me. He was angry at something behind me I couldn't see. When I woke up, I thought I heard him laugh. I don't know what to do with this, but I thought you should have it." I put the letter in the wooden box with Cal's note. I closed the latch. I made tea. I went outside and stood under the wedding tree and said, "You were right," into the bark. The wind moved the branches, and I swear it felt like a nod. Spring came, as it does, forgetting none of the instructions, forgiving none of the errors, offering itself anyway. I pruned the water sprouts the way Cal taught me, firm, not unkind. I sharpened my shears on a stone he had picked up by the lake the first year we were poor and almost happy anyway. I posted a sign by the stand that said, open Saturdays, rain or shine, no developers. And because I am not without humor, I added in smaller letters, lawyers welcome with pie. On the first Saturday of the season, a young couple I didn't know brought their toddler to meet a tree. They asked if they could buy one of the old bushel baskets we don't use anymore. I told them they could have it. I told them to fill it with whatever they were raising. They smiled like a plan had gotten lighter. As they walked away, the little boy looked back and waved, and I waved back. And for a moment, the years folded up like a quilt, and I could feel the whole weight and warmth of it in my hands. I thought of all the people who think time is a thief. Time is only a thief if you forget to lock the door. Paper can be a thief. Men with machines can be thieves. Time, when you live it with both eyes open and one hand on a shovel, is a farm. They tried to cut down my orchard. They did not cut me down with it. I grew new branches, a scholarship, a will that speaks in the language greedy men can read, a community that shows up with casseroles and shovels. And when the jars cooled on the counter that night, and each lid made its tiny popping sound of acquiescence, I said thank you to each one out loud. I said thank you to the judge and the clerk and the deputy and the girl who cried under the Ida Reds, and to Cal, who left me the gift of a lasso J and a stubborn vow on paper. I said thank you to my own old bones for holding the line. It is a simple story when you write it on a chalkboard. People came, trees stood, law worked, love stayed. It is less simple when you live it. There is rain and diesel and shame and coffee and letters in boxes and hands that shake where no one can see. There are strangers who know your business and friends who remind you of your business when you forget. There is the long road down Bank Street to the courthouse that only feels short after you turn around to go home with the order in your hand. I stood on the porch at dusk. The wind lifted the ribbon on the wedding tree and set it fluttering like a flag that only one house recognizes. The first stars came out, a slow applause. If you have ever held a line, you know this feeling. If you have not, you will. Someone will try you. They will say words that taste like sugar and swallow like vinegar. They will bring paper that looks like truth in poor lighting. They will bring machines like arguments that do not stop with quiet. Bring your ledger. Bring your pen. Bring your J that loops like it learned to lasso in a past life. Bring a lawyer, a deputy, a clerk with a jar of stale peppermints. Bring a ribbon for the tree you love and something in a pot that needs stirring so you don't spend all your courage in one place. Stay until the orchard breathes out. You'll hear it. It's the sound of a thing that got to be itself for one more season. They tried to cut down my orchard. I cut them out of my will. And then I did what women like me do when the story reaches its last paragraph and the neighbors still need pie. I went back inside, rolled out dough, sliced apples I could have named as babies, and baked. The house filled with a smell that makes people forgive themselves for things they haven't done yet. I opened the windows. I let it out onto the road. I let the world know we were still here.